The final chapter on JFK, Chapter 16, Exhibit 139, et al. Segment 1, The Rifle.
Welcome to Chapter 16, Exhibit 139, et al. We're going to be looking at the assassination rifle and the additional material surrounding the rifle itself. Let's see what the U.S. government had to say about Exhibit 139. Up on the green screen is Warren Commission Exhibit 1977, an FBI memo dated March 17, 1964, specifically talking about the defective rifle that was allegedly used in the Kennedy assassination. And in that regard, even the Warren Commission, in their summary and conclusions report, which I have up on the screen, stating the Commission Exhibit 139, the Mannlicher Carcano military rifle, was generally in poor condition and it lacked proper cleaning, maintenance, and lubrication. If one looks at the screen, it is clear from photographs of the scope at the outset that the objective lens, or the part that a shooter looks through, is about the size of a nickel or just a little bit more. This, of course, makes it very difficult for somebody to shoot and make multiple shots in a row, because if the rifle moves in any manner, the view through the scope will change and will have to be recentered. Beyond that, the scope was actually mounted for a left-handed person, making it difficult to look through the scope. Of great interest is the fact that as part of the testing of the rifle, the FBI used a machine rest, which had been around for almost 100 years, and that would allow a rifle to be placed into a locked rest, so there would be no movement of the rifle at all, in order to test the accuracy of the rifle without any human factors involved. And with the machine rest tests conducted by the FBI, they reported to the Warren Commission, well, we could not sight the weapon in using the telescope, and no attempt was made to sight it in using the iron sight. We did adjust the telescopic sight by the addition of 2 shims, but the elevation adjustment in the telescopic sight was not sufficient to bring the point of impact to the aiming point. And in fact, it was so bad that the FBI agent testifying to the Warren Commission stated that if we move the crosshairs in the telescope to the left, it would also affect the elevation setting of the telescope. And when we sighted in the rifle, approximately, we fired several shots and found that the shots were not at all landing in the same place. They were moving away from the point of impact. The FBI agent told the Warren Commission that the problem with the sight was apparently due to construction of the telescope, which did not stabilize itself. So, a scope that didn't work. And of course, FBI agent Frazier, the ballistics expert for the FBI, also discussed the fact that they took the weapon to Quantico in an attempt to sight it in. And he stated that in attempting to adjust and sight in the rifle, every time we changed the adjusting screws to move the crosshairs in the telescopic sight in one direction, it also affected the movement of impact, or the point of impact, in the other direction. Even J. Edgar Hoover, in reporting to legal counsel for the Warren Commission, stated that the telescopic sight could not be properly aligned with the target, since the sight reached the limit of its adjustment before reaching accurate alignment, meaning you couldn't hit what you were looking at. And of course, if somebody wanted to try and fire through the weapon's iron sights that are on the rifle itself, that was worse. Mr. Frazier, testifying to the Warren Commission, stated that it would be much more difficult to fire using the open sights or peep sight because it was set for 200 meters. Beyond the scope and the iron sights, even FBI agent Frazier, when testifying before the Warren Commission, stated that the rifle barrel, and he says, when we first got it, was not in excellent condition. I would say it was in fair condition. In other words, it showed the effects of wear and corrosion. One of the issues is Frazier and a lot of the FBI agents, when they're talking, stated that when we first got it. So no one really knows when the rifle was fixed or repaired, but we do know the FBI admitted when they first got the rifle, the barrel was in poor condition. And of course, what's even worse is the firing pin. The FBI noted that the firing pin in this rifle had been used extensively, as shown by the wear on the nose of the striking portion of the firing pin and the presence of rust on the firing pin and the spring. Mr. Simons, who himself with his agents were involved with attempting to fire Exhibit 139, stated to the Warren Commission that they did not even pull the trigger on the weapon because we were, quote, a little concerned about breaking the firing pin. Can you think of anything worse with a rifle? How about if the bolt action did not work? And in fact, again, FBI agent Simons stated to the Warren Commission that one of his agents had difficulty even opening the bolt in his first firing exercise. What assassin would use a weapon where the bolt cannot be used quickly, rapidly, or reliably? Perhaps someone who was using a rifle who the FBI determined had a hair trigger. The FBI reported to the Warren Commission that there were comments about the trigger pull on the rifle. The trigger pull was so bad that they actually called it a two-stage operation. The first stage of the trigger was relatively free, and then suddenly required a greater pull to actually fire the weapon. Can you imagine that? Smooth, and then you have to pull real hard to get that shot off. The only thing that could make the Warren Commission Exhibit 139 rifle become a circus prop would be that the gun sling that was attached to the weapon wasn't even a gun sling, but was taken off some type of musical instrument like a guitar. And as conceded by the Warren Commission, the sling was not a standard sling, and the sling was too short to use to provide additional steadiness for a shooter. And let me make a mention of our segment title card, which is of a completely broken rifle. That was a bit of an exaggeration, but in this case, it's pretty close to the truth. We know that the rifle was part of a defective lot. We know that the scope for the rifle was mounted on the wrong side, the left side, which would be good for a left-handed person such as myself. But if you're a right-handed shooter like Lee Harvey Oswald, it makes it more difficult to fire the weapon. We also know that the scope didn't work at all. And the FBI and their agents, when they testified before the Warren Commission, said they couldn't use it at all, even after they put shims in. Worse yet, the permanent iron sights on the weapon were set for a target at 200 meters, far beyond the distance that JFK and his limousine were in, making all shots high. High to the extent that one of the sharpshooters completely missed the target using the iron sights. So they didn't use the iron sights after that. Additionally, we know the action was rusted. The bolt jammed, and several agents had difficulty working the bolt mechanism. We know that the spring was rusted. The firing pin was so weak and so damaged that the agents did not use it when they were practicing for their time tests using the weapon for fear of breaking the firing pin. All in all, no matter how you want to slice the pie, the rifle was a piece of junk. And with that said, see you in the next segment.